So today I'm going to focus a little bit on the risk. There's a lot of conversation in these type of conferences about the capabilities and what we can do with these vehicles. But from a regulator standpoint, I really want to remind you all about the fact that there is risk in this process. So let me begin by sharing several questions that must be considered. What are some of the main risks associated with unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS as we call them in the FAA? What are the potential consequences to opening our skies to UAS? What about the people on the ground? What kind of injuries or damage could be caused by one of these aircraft? More than you might think, even though they may weigh only a few pounds. Let's make sure. There we go. So let's begin by discussing an incident that occurred last fall during the running of the bulls in Virginia. Apparently the folks in Richmond really liked the spectacle of Pamplona and they decided to duplicate it. It was done at the Virginia Motor Speedway, and this video is an unauthorized unmanned aircraft, which is a small open rotor hexacopter that was hired to film the event. So let me play the video for you. Okay, this is an apple. Where's the mouse? Well, no, I didn't get it. Ah, okay. Oops. Yeah, that one.
It just hit a dude in the face! It just crashed into the stands just now. The GoPro helicopter thingy. Yeah, look, I'm like looking at it. Oh, there's some dude in the face. I was just like following it in the sky. I wasn't recording, but definitely screaming. Oh my god, that was crazy. It hit him right in the face. Man. Wicked.
Apples. Anyway, the rest of it just goes on them commenting about the people that were injured. So there's not really much additional information to be gained by playing to the end of it. The FAA investigated this incident and did determine the identity of the operator. When questioned, the operator believed that the crash was caused by a malfunctioning battery. Several people in the crowd sustained minor injuries as a result of the incident, but the potential for serious injury as a result of small manned aircraft is real. And unfortunately, this wasn't an isolated incident. During the Endure Batavia Triathlon in Australia earlier this year, an athlete was injured when a small UAS commissioned to film the event fell from the sky, hitting her in the head. So here's the video on that one. I am trainable.
A triathlete suffered head injuries after an unmanned aerial vehicle fell out of the sky, with the pilot claiming the drone had been hacked. As if you don't have enough on your plate when running, swimming and cycling 30-odd miles in the Australian sun, now you have to worry about drones falling on your head too. Triathlete Georgia Ogden was competing in the Endure Batavia Triathlon in Geraldton, Western Australia yesterday when she was injured by an unmanned aerial vehicle falling out of the sky. The unfortunate triathlete suffered minor head injuries requiring 3 stitches when the drone fell some 10 meters from above the course. The drone was operated by a local video company filming the race. In a dramatic twist, the drone's pilot Warren Abrams claims it had been channel hopped, or hacked, possibly by someone nearby with a mobile phone taking control away from the operator. Australia's aviation watchdog, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, is investigating the incident. In Australia, drones in commercial use must stay 30 meters away from people. Meanwhile, in the US, a judge recently ruled that drones in American skies are perfectly legal, throwing out the Federal Aviation Authority's first and so far only fine for drone use. Amazon, Google, and Facebook are reportedly looking to drones for various uses, including delivering goods and extending internet access, not to mention the Cupid drone equipped with an 80,000 volt stun gun.
So the Australians did investigate the incident, and they questioned the operator, who, by the way, had not been granted a license. In Australia, they have a system where you can get a license to operate an unmanned aircraft. He speculated, as I mentioned on there, that the crash was a result of numerous Wi-Fi devices in the area, causing interference with the system's command and control link. Well, as a result of the incident, as you can see, the competitor was unable to complete. She required several stitches to patch up her head. What's also interesting about this video is the narrator cites the recent NTSB administrative law judge's decision on the Raphael Perker case and provides what is completely inaccurate assessment of what was going on there. I'll talk more about that later in my presentation, but let's just say that the media's reporting hasn't always been completely accurate or helpful on that case.
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Darrell Burkey, and I'm from Pro UAV Australia. I was very disappointed to see that example that you had in your presentation from Western Australia. We do have regulation and we do have education, and you see the results. Okay, that person was not regulated. Okay, so you can't regulate common sense. You know, people have looked at the rest of his videos, and the man is an idiot, and he's a danger to the public. Now, people who fly professionally aren't going to be. So I really don't understand this concept where, on the one hand, you can say the FAA is about safety, public safety, yet on the other hand, you're saying the only people you're stopping from flying, or who are being stopped, you're not stopping them, are the responsible professionals. So you've got hundreds of thousands of people out there who have no idea what the regulations are or what safety protocols are. Nothing's being done about them, like trapping, you know. But here's a group of people who are responsible, do want to have insurance, do want to be regulated, and they have no way to do it. So I don't understand that. I'll also say about that video, the pilot in that video claims that that woman tripped and he did not hit her. So you'll want to be careful about that, because, you know, you'll be as bad as the media if you just generate misinformation. We don't know what happened there. It's being investigated. So it's not a good thing at all to have in that presentation. But my main concern is, you know, why isn't there an avenue for the responsible people to fly and to make a living and have a business, when you could just say, well, I'm not charging for this, you know, I'm charging for the advice. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They go fly anyway, they don't charge for the flying, and they charge you for the advice. You know, so it's a game. If you're about safety, why don't you get serious and come up with some regulations that support that?
Well, we are very serious, and we're doing, like I said, it's a #1 priority of the FAA to get those regulations out. The process has been, the regulatory process has been, over the years, Congress has passed many laws that require many different analyses to be conducted before they'll allow a law to go into, a rule to go into effect. This is to protect the public from over-regulation. So it slows down the process. There are a lot of people involved along the way who can all hold up their hand and say, no, we don't agree with your analysis, you got to go back and redo it. You know, I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I'm really not. That's the process we have to work with, and that's why it takes so long to get regulations out.
Well, Congress has asked you to complete that work by 2015 in your statement.
But Congress didn't exempt me from the laws that they themselves had passed that govern the regulatory process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're in between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, sir. And trust me, it is my #1 priority. It has been since I took this job 2 years ago, and I spend an inordinate amount of my time and energy working on getting that rule out. So okay. I'm with you 100%.
Okay. Thank you for your time. No more bad examples from Australia.
All right. The FAA is working with ASTM International, a globally recognized leader in the development and delivery of international voluntary consensus standards, to create standards for small unmanned aircraft. and the 7 that are out are listed here on the slide. The initial release of these standards occurred earlier this year, and the FAA is in the process of evaluating these standards with the objective of recognizing them for use in certification of small unmanned aircraft. We believe that aircraft manufactured, operated, and maintained according to consensus standards will lower the risk for people and property on the ground. The process of creating and implementing standards is just one challenge. Safe, smart use of UAS is another. Safety is always the FAA's #1 priority. Small unmanned aircraft systems must not be operated carelessly or recklessly. So this is the perfect segue into a discussion about operational risk. As many of you know, in 2011, Raphael Perker operated a small UAS over the University of Virginia campus. He flew close to an active heliport, under a pedestrian bridge, and so close to one person that they had to leap out of the way. After a thorough investigation, the FAA assessed Mr. Perker with a $10,000 civil penalty for careless and reckless UAS operation. Mr. Perker appealed the proposed penalty to the National Transportation Safety Board. In March of this year, an NTSB administrative law judge ruled in Perker's favor. The FAA has since appealed that decision to the board, and the resolution is stayed pending the full NTSB's decision. So effectively what that means is nothing has changed from a legal standpoint, and the FAA continues to enforce the airspace rules on unmanned aircraft. We anticipate the notice of proposed rulemaking for the small UAS rule will be released for public comment by the end of this year. The rulemaking process is a lengthy one. This is just the first step toward introducing UAS weighing less than 55 pounds into our skies. It's important to mention that until the small UAS rule is finalized, commercial operations are only authorized by the FAA on a case-by-case basis. Currently, this has only happened once, in the Arctic. However, there is potentially good news for certain operators. Work is underway to implement the provisions of Section 333 of the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012. This will allow us to move forward with incremental UAS integration. This section of the Act can only be applied to specific, limited, low-risk uses in advance of the small UAS rule. I stress the word may as we are still evaluating this option and developing our internal processes. If we are going to leverage Section 333 for those low-risk operations, there will be economic benefits as we begin to address the pent-up demand for commercial UAS operations. Companies from 4 industries from the FAA have approached the FAA and are considering filing an exemption request, which would begin the process. These industries include precision agriculture, filmmaking, power line and pipeline inspections, and oil and gas flare stack inspections. Precision agriculture falls into 2 categories. Application of fertilizer and pesticides, and crop monitoring. In Japan, farmers have successfully used unmanned aircraft for precision agriculture for decades. Currently, more acres of Japanese farmland are being applicated by unmanned helicopters than manned aircraft on an acre-by-acre basis. So using unmanned aircraft can lower operating costs and has enabled Japanese farmers to apply exactly the right amount of fertilizer or pesticide. In addition, the small helicopters used for this purpose create the right amount of rotor wash that enables the pesticides to be applied to both the top and the underside of the leaves. In the U.S., large farms use manned aircraft for aerial application of chemicals. Historically, this is one of the highest risk forms of manned aviation. So using unmanned aircraft for precision agriculture may actually reduce the risk in the U.S. airspace.
Hi, good afternoon. Rory Paul, Voltair, Robotics. I featured in your presentation, by the way, for precision ag, without you knowing it. I have a question in 2 parts. One is, November last year, FAA spokesman Les Dorr publicly announced that agricultural users, farmers, could fly UAS under AMA guidelines. Take that data, apply it to their operations. Does this not constitute commercial use? One.
So you
And-
really don't want me to answer that question?
I really would, because I actually spoke to Les Daw in person.
So, all right, the way it works is if I'm a modeler and I happen to be a farmer and I operate my model aircraft over my farm, as long as it's done safely, it's none of the business of the FAA what you're doing with the data you collect. We're not going to go get into that business. Our business is safety, not governing commerce. However, if you formally want an answer from the FAA lawyers about whether or not it is a business purpose, their answer is pretty simple. If you can deduct the cost of the aircraft from your taxes like you would a tractor or any other piece of farm gear, then yeah, it's part of your ongoing business and it becomes it crosses the line from hobby to
And
business.
Is this not an infringement of our Fifth Amendment rights to private property access?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not getting into that.
I suggest that people actually look up US versus Cosby, 1946, where the Supreme Court allows private property owners access to airspace. Yes. US versus Cosby, 1946.
Access, not a
We do-
problem. It's whether or not the aircraft is
Access and-
certificated and the pilot is certificated as required by the FAA authorizing legislation. That's really the issue. We're happy to provide access. Many farmers have aircraft that they operate out of their farms because they're just so big they need it to get around. Those aircraft have to be certified. Those pilots have to have certificates. That's the law. So we're not saying you can't fly your aircraft. We're just saying, hey, you got to follow the rules. That's all.
Okay. Thank you.
The film industry has a tremendous interest in using unmanned aircraft. Historically, filmmakers have hired helicopters and airplanes for overhead shots. This can get expensive and it is dangerous. It can create extra noise and wind on the set. But these issues could become irrelevant with the use of unmanned aircraft on closed sets. Has anyone here seen the James Bond movie Skyfall? Show of hands. Yeah, quite a few folks. Well, if you remember the motorcycle chase scenes that took place on top of the rooftop of the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, Turkey, they were all shot using sophisticated unmanned aircraft. If you've seen the movie, and you've already seen just how spectacular the video captured by unmanned aircraft can be.
Hi, Jim. Gus from IsisCopter. Thank you for showing up as well. I've been safely flying remote-controlled model aircraft for over 37 years, and I've also safely been flying full-scale aircraft as a commercial pilot for 20 years. In my 3,500 hours of flight time, I have only seen one remote-controlled model aircraft. And that was at a field that was adjacent to, it was an AMA field adjacent to a flying field over near Scottsdale. Now, this morning, Doug Davis was talking about, well, we're concerned about unmanned aircraft getting close to full-scale airfields. I don't think hobbyists, many people who are not hobbyists don't understand that there are a tremendous amount of AMA fields adjacent to full-scale aircraft flying fields. Van Nuys in particular, there's an AMA field just to the south of it. I've been there, and I don't think most people are aware that large model aircraft, LMAs, are allowed that weigh up to 125 pounds and can be gas turbine powered and can fly up to 200 miles per hour. I've seen them. I have video of them flying.
Yep.
How is it that they will continue to fly unregulated, but somebody flying a 2-pound plastic aircraft cannot do
Well,
that to take a photo?
I argue that they're not unregulated. They're required to follow the rules of the air just like anybody else, and you can ask
They're not-
AMA, it's written into their,
But they're not regulated by the FAA. They are self-regulated.
the
AMA
airspace rules, and it's even in section 336, which gives the AMA their special, the model aircraft operators their special status. It says that in no way does this section limit the FAA from enforcing its safety regulations. Model aircraft have always been subject to the right-of-way rules. It's written into the AMA. guidelines, and if you follow the AMA safety procedures, you're following the FAA rules. So it's a misnomer to say they're unregulated. We don't require them to be certified aircraft or pilots, but the rules of the air apply to them as well. So, and AMA fields coordinate with the local air traffic facilities. They have procedures. They talk to them, and it's dealt with on a local basis, and it's perfectly safe, and it has been, and we believe that it will continue to be. It's the people who operate outside of the AMA guidelines that I'm talking about. The people who are using first-person view to fly beyond visual line of sight without an observer, which is totally contrary to the AMA safety guidelines. We work very closely with AMA. We think they promote safe model aviation, and we have a memorandum of agreement to that effect. So, I don't have any issues whatsoever with model aviation. What I have issues with are people who don't follow the community-based guidelines.
Okay, I totally understand. One other quick comment, because I used to own and operate my own Part 135 air carrier operation, and I actually, one of the reasons why I had to give up that business is because there were so many guys who were flying. In fact, we had a name for them. It was called bootlegging. They would literally rent an aircraft from a flight school or a flying club and fly people from point A to B. I followed the rules. I got insurance. I worked with the San Diego FSDO. I was and those are onerous regulations, as you know. I went through all of them, so my prices had to be higher, and I was constantly undercut, and I'm afraid I'm seeing the exact same thing is going to happen here. If any regulations are put in place, there are guys who, well, they're already out there right now. There's probably thousands of commercial operations going on today, and it's only going to continue. But guys like me, as a certificate holder, I cannot put my certificate at risk. So I am grounded. I have complied with, as I am told, as I've been taught to comply with regulations and policy. I may disagree with them, but I have been complying with them. Meanwhile, there are many, many operators with far less skill than I have. And I know the FAA's intention is to make the national airspace more safe, but it is my fear and concern that it will, if any regulations are put in place, that the national airspace will become less safe. Any comment to that, or?
Well, all I can say is that I'll do my best to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And if you know of people who are operating illegally, all you got to do is report them to your local FSDO, and they'll investigate it.
There are people flying bootleg charters in King Airs, Gulfstreams, Bonanzas, Barons, and I've talked to the FAA about it, and they said we don't have the manpower to stop everybody. We have to catch them in the act, and so if they can't do that, they have to catch them in the act. And so if they can't do that with manned aircraft, I just don't see how it's going to be possible with the literally hundreds of thousands of small model aircraft that are out there.
Well, fortunately for us, most of the people want to follow the rules. They want to be compliant with the laws, and they will voluntarily comply. Normally, it catches up to you eventually. If you're operating outside the rules, eventually it'll catch up to you. But the situation is what it is. I mean, it's like speeding. The police only catch a small fraction, but by virtue of them being out there, they keep people close to the speed limit. It's the same sort of theory that we have to deal with.
Okay, I hope you're right. Thank you, sir.
Me too.
Hey, Pat Kerby. Thanks for coming. It was a great presentation. I really appreciate the lines of communication. I represent I have a film and video. I represent the film and video interest in UAV, and it's a really exciting time, and there's a lot of interest in it, and we're really hoping to resolve things and come up with the ban on commercial use. In this, it seems like it's a different animal because the hobbyists and the devices are out there, and the hobbyists have them, and it seems like they are trusted to be self-regulating, but those of us who are going to have insurance and have client supervision, so the privacy issues are taken care of, and so on and so forth, and we're going to have substantial investments in our crafts and stuff like that. We are not trusted to be self-regulating. And I agree that we need to come up with regulations, but I just want to know why it's not like, okay, guys, there's new technologies here, and it's a new kind of a new era here, and we want to work with you guys and come up with safe and sane regulations going down the road, and we need your help with it instead of, okay, here's a bunch of new toys, and you guys can't play with them until we figure it out. And we kind of like to see it the former way.
Well, and you know, I'm completely with you. First, I need to bust the myth. The FAA does not have a ban on commercial UAS use. I just showed you we actually have approved, you know, at least one aircraft. And actually, there's a whole bunch more aircraft approved that are going to be operating this summer, also up in the Arctic from both AeroVironment and.
Can I drop your name? Can I drop your name when I ask for an exemption?
Yeah, sure. Everybody else does. So, but the bottom line is, we understand that the certification rules for large aircraft obviously are just impossible for a small quadcopter to meet. We understand that. But I really don't like people saying there's a ban, because the rules are there. You just got to comply with them. And there's actually a rule in the rule book, 2117, that says, hey, if these certification rules don't work for you, propose your own. We'll look at them, we'll work with you, we'll figure out a way to approve that aircraft. That is actually how all airships are approved today. There is no section in the FAA rulebook that says how you approve airships. There are some consensus industry standards that airship manufacturers bring into the FAA and get them certified. So, you know, the bottom line is that there is a path forward. It isn't optimal. That's why we're working on the small UAS rule, because that's a much more reasonable and appropriate approach for small unmanned aircraft. You know, but unfortunately, the regulatory process is very slow and deliberative. 7 to 10 years is typical for any significant rulemaking, and this one is considered significant by the Office of Management and Budget, which is their call to make. So, you know, it's going to take time. It has taken time, and it's my mission, and now it's the mission of the FAA administrator to make this a top priority for the FAA. The small rule is on our strategic initiatives for the entire FAA. It can't get any more important to the FAA than it is today. So, you know, we understand, we feel your pain, we want to make this move forward. That's why we're, you know, in the interim between now and when that rule is out, we're trying to do what we can under Section 333, and the filming industry is leading the way. So the way that process will work is the operator will come in and say, hey, we've got the following safety procedures, and they're going to be based on the MPAA procedures for using manned aircraft. And they say, we believe that we follow these procedures. We shouldn't have to get an airworthiness certificate for our aircraft. So that'll get published in the Federal Register. We'll take comments on it. If it's all approved, then the next company that comes in will be able to duplicate that exemption request exactly, and then it won't have to get published. It'll go through in a few weeks. So the idea is that in these specific industries where you have a very safe, controlled environment, like a closed set for filming, with professional pilots and, like you said, the people who we should be trusting. So we're trying to use Section 333 to do exactly what you suggest, which is in the area where we can trust people, and we should trust them because of history and their professionalism. We're going to find a way to do that. There can be real safety benefits for using UAS for certain applications, specifically for operations that we call the 3Ds, work that is dangerous, dull, or dirty. Oil and gas flare stack inspection falls into this dangerous category. I don't know if any of you have ever been driving along the highway at night and near a refinery and seen these giant balls of flame coming out. Let's see. Okay, I'm not sure how to make the laser work. Yeah, anyway. Down here. Yeah, that would be bad. That would definitely be a high-risk adventure. So, use of unmanned aircraft in these situations can actually help reduce the risk to workers. it's currently they have to shut down the entire production line of either the oil processing facility or the oil collection facility in order to inspect these. So if they use an unmanned aircraft, they can save time and money and keep the poor guys that have to climb those things and inspect them visually safe. So workers can be more thorough in their work while remaining out of harm's way. For example, when lightning hits the power line, these big transmission lines that you see running around everywhere, when lightning hits one of those, they have to go out and inspect them to make sure that they weren't damaged. The catch is the damage is on top of the wire. So the only way they can do it is to get on a bucket or a ladder truck and get up there and take a look. But by using a UAS, they can see that power line from multiple angles. They don't have to use ladders, they don't have to use bucket trucks, and they don't have to fear electric shock, and the operator can be a safe distance away from the line. They can see the line in its entirety and analyze it using HD video. So we hope that by using Section 333 to authorize some of these types of operations will help us move the ball forward.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. My name is Wes Oliphant. I'm a structural engineer, actually, out of Houston, Texas. I'm very pleased that 2 out of the 4 categories that you just mentioned are things that we've been trying to get an exemption or some form of certification to operate. High voltage electrical transmission line inspections, as well as oil and gas refinery flare inspections. I would add that we also do inspections as well on high telecommunication towers, which have microwave and other things that make it very dangerous to climb. So when we went to FAA more than 18 months ago, we were not directed to this Section 333.
Did you come to my office?
No, sir. We went. Well, we did go to your office, yes, but I'm not sure you answered it. We were directed back out here to get a category exemption for operating, and then when we followed that path, it was as onerous as getting a Beechcraft aircract certified, which we have a 4-pound octocopter from Germany that we'd like to use. So I guess my question is, again, I'm very pleased that you're finally, or that the office is finally coming around to, because I understand the risk probably as much as anybody as a structural engineer, and the safety aspects of doing what we do. There's been numerous helicopter crashes doing what we do. There's been numerous people fall off towers doing what we do. So using something I can keep my 2 feet on the ground and do it makes it extremely viable. I guess my question, when is it going to be something that I can move forward with, in your estimation? And is it going to be limited to just those, or is it, again, some of these other safety things that doing undersides of bridges, things like that, that we also expect to be able to do?
So the way the law reads is it's limited to essentially what we believe where it would be safe to use. So the way the process works is an operator, somebody like yourself, has to come in and ask for an exemption with a safety case that says, here's why I think I should be granted this exemption. So the companies that are coming in and talking to us are some of the big folks who can afford to pay people to do that. Once they successfully get that first one done, then, and it will be public information, it's published in the Federal Register, you can duplicate that and come back in and ask for essentially the same privilege that was granted to them. So I can't tell you a timeline because it's really dependent upon the industry coming to the FAA and us getting them through that exemption process.
In my instance, again, not trying to belabor it, but we operate in 47 different states last year, and that was one of the other obstacles that we ran across. They wanted us to very well define the operating space we were going to be in. Well, I mean, I operate in the entire U.S., so that was another obstacle that hopefully we can address when time comes.
Yep. Yeah, because the operating approval will be separate, because the exemption will just be for the airworthiness piece. You'll still have to get an operational approval as well.
Hi, Jim. Eric Andelin. I'm a former board member of the MAPS organization, and I just wanted to point out that you've done a great job working with us. We appreciate that. and you were talking about Section 333. Would you talk a little bit about the under 4.4 pound rule for the folks here?
Well, there is no under 4.4 pound rule. The way the law reads, everything 55 pounds and under is all lumped into one category. And because the way the law reads that defines unmanned aircraft as aircraft, basically Congress, forced us to apply, every rule in the book, basically to every aircraft of any size. They didn't create a floor. So, at this point, we don't have any justification to do anything different for 4 pounds or 40 pounds or, 55 pounds.
Thank you.
Hey Jim, how you doing? Thank you. My name is Brian. I'm from AeroCine. I'm from New York. We have a professional, we fly cinema grade cameras for motion picture film. Currently, we are flying in Dubai, Mexico, everywhere outside of the US. And being in New York, you can only imagine how kind of I get requests to fly a drone down Fifth Avenue, and I don't do that. Okay.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. Well, and I don't want to do that too. I get a lot of requests to do like public things, flying over crowds, and that's like not my thing. I mean, I want to use it for motion picture closed set environments. We all know that there are constant stories of helicopter crashes on movie sets. I mean, the Twilight Zone is probably like the most famous incident. But being an example that you use the film industry, I didn't know about 333. There are incidents where I've been on set where the helicopter and the real helicopter for the for acquiring the scene, every radar thing, every signal's going off, and the director's saying, "Go closer, go closer, go closer." So a drone would definitely rectify that. So I'm just kind of curious, I got a call from the Wachowski brothers. They did The Matrix, and they wanted to shoot something. What kind of timeline do I have to actually call you and be like, okay, I want to do this. This is why it's safe. This is where we're going to shoot. These are my certified pilots who've been doing this for 20 years. Like 10 days? Is it a month? Like, is it possible even?
Yes, it's definitely possible. I can't give you a date because we haven't done it yet. I mean, I don't know exactly how long it would take. The procedures would have to be in place for us to do that. But we approve police operations to go off in an hour or less. Right. We actually approve the Arlington County Sheriff to operate their aircraft within the Class B airspace around Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in a matter of a couple hours, and I think it was less than 2 hours, because they had an active hostage situation. They needed to put it up, but we were able to coordinate with the air traffic control facility. We were able to coordinate with the police officers, and we were, we were able to make it happen in short order. Now, obviously, a movie filming isn't as much of an emergency as a hostage situation, but
you'll be surprised.
But the bottom line is that I think that as we begin to develop, once that first one is approved and we got a company out there operating, we'll begin to develop the procedures by which we can authorize these things quickly.
And that is obviously on a case by case. I'm not going to have a blanket annual thing. That's like, oh, we're doing this in New Jersey on this road. I have permission from this authority, this authority. And that's my other situation, which is, let's say there is a ruling from the FAA. Let's just say Spider-Man 8 wants to shoot in New York. Okay, I get a phone call from Spider-Man 8. Hey, we're going to pay you $1 bajillion to fly a drone, do this, do that. And I get permission from you guys that, all right, it's scouted. He has pilots that are certified at the highest level, people who are actually flying real helicopters, motion picture industry, blah, 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 insured, everything. Does the mayor's, because in order to film in New York, you need a permit from the mayor's office. At what extent does your authority supersede, or does their authority supersede? Like, can I call the mayor's?
So the way the authorities work, if it's in the air, access to the airspace is the exclusive authority of the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, where you take off and land, they can get involved with that. So they can tell you, oh, you can't take off and land from here, and there's nothing really we could do about that. So
there's just going to be like a conversation that needs to happen between whoever owns the ground where I'm standing and the FAA.
Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. I want to be sure that it's clear that the operations we're talking about are specific, limited, low risk to people and property on the ground. This isn't going to be a open season on new way of doing business. Now I want to conclude by showing you one of our big successes in 2013, the first authorized commercial UAS flight. The flight of the ScanEagle UAS took place in the Chukchi Sea in September with operations conducted by ConocoPhillips and in situ. ConocoPhillips used the surplus military aircraft rules, which allowed the FAA to accept the military certification to give a type certificate to these ScanEagle aircraft. There were 4 of them. We authorized these flights beyond visual line of sight due to the remote operating area and the safety procedures that were used during the mission. The FAA is tasked in the 2012 reauthorization law with integrating UAS in the Arctic on a permanent basis. This demonstration represents the first step toward accomplishing the goal set for us by Congress. While we're not quite there yet, we have additional demonstration flights planned for this summer. So here's my favorite video, which shows the first launch and first recovery flight in the Arctic Ocean. Oops. Okay, still need training. Always amazed me that the wings don't just come off. And this takes place while the ship is moving, and they communicate the ship's location to the UAS, and they have about a 99% reliability of the capture of those aircraft. It's amazing. So as you can see, the future is now. This is an incredibly safe time for aviation, but much work remains to be done. The uses for UAS are virtually limitless. FAA forecasts that we can expect approximately 7,500 small unmanned aircraft in our national airspace in the 5 years following implementation of the small UAS rule. As we enter these uncharted times, safety remains our #1 priority. The FAA must ensure the safety and efficiency of the entire airspace, including all aircraft, both manned and unmanned. The more risk we mitigate now, the safer we will be as we integrate this exciting new technology into our world and into our lives.
I'm Brad Huber. I have a number of years of experience doing drone software development, and now I'm an investor and enthusiast in the space. And I'm a little bit of a betting man. I've got my fingers crossed that 2015 will open up the skies for broad commercial use. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective on the inside, would you say that it's likely the FAA will meet those timelines put out by Congress, and 2015 will have broad commercial use?
Well, I think if you go read the FAA's reauthorization carefully, what it says is that we have to create a comprehensive plan that describes what safe integration is going to look like in 2015. There's no words in there about full integration, full access, nothing like that. It says, and I've talked to the authorizers about what they meant. They said, look, we want you to put specific measurable milestones in place and get something done by 2015. And so we've done that. We've published our roadmap, we've published our comprehensive plan, and we've said the things that we're going to accomplish by 2015, the biggest being the small unmanned aircraft rule. If we can get that out, that's really the big step forward. But there are other things we're doing, like the Section 333 approvals, the restricted category certifications. There's other aircraft that are being certificated. So there's measurable progress all along the way.
Very good. And for yourself, if you were going to bet, when would you expect to see broad commercial use?
I learned a long time ago never to speculate. I won't do it.
Okay, thank you.
We're moving ahead as fast as we can while maintaining the safety of the national airspace system, and that's the best I can give you.
Thank you.
Question. I was just wondering if I could get a personal exemption because I put on such a good show.
Sorry, Patrick.
Hey, Jim. This is Jack Nicas with the Wall Street Journal. So I've spoken to dozens of people, I would say drone users over the past several months, including several here today who clearly are operating drones commercially without the authority of the FAA, which I suppose would be in violation of FAA policy. So with that said, how would you rate your effectiveness in enforcing your FAA policy over the past several years? And if you feel like there have been some holes and it's been ineffective, what does that tell you going forward about an enforcement strategy when you do have a final rule? Can you have inspectors on each street corner watching for a small UAS?
Well, obviously the FAA is never going to have an inspector on every street corner, just like we don't have an inspector for every air carrier airplane. The FAA's approach to enforcement is that when we are made aware of an unsafe aircraft operation, be it manned or unmanned, we investigate. If we determine that, yes, there was an unsafe operation, then we communicate that to the pilot or operator. Normally, 99% of the folks, once they understand that what they were doing wasn't safe and, was outside of the FAA rules, they stop. And it ends there. If they don't, or they're not, they tell us that they're going to keep going, then we'll send them a formal letter that says, hey, you're outside of the FAA's rules, you shouldn't be doing that, please stop. And again, if they don't, then, and there's another incident of careless and reckless, like Mr. Perker and some of the other, there's others examples, then we will go down the formal civil penalty route. I think, in reality, if you look at the potential damage, I'm sure the 5 people that were injured at the running of the bulls would probably, who knows, they may have had civil action against the operator, and that could be much more effective deterrent than anything the FAA could do. But the bottom line is, what we always do is when we were made aware of an unsafe condition, we have an inspector investigate it. If they're determined, yes, indeed, that was an unsafe operation of an aircraft, then we follow that step-by-step process to hopefully, bring people in compliance, because the objective is compliance, not enforcement. So there may not be a tremendous number of enforcements out there, but there is a lot of work going on in the community to try to get people in compliance.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to clarify. So you make specific unsafe operation. That's different than commercial operation? If there's someone who is flying under 400 feet in line of sight away from an airport, et cetera, but someone's paying them to do it, is that an unsafe operation, or is that in compliance with FAA policy?
Well, if you look at the rule book, the entire FAA rule book has multiple different categories of approvals, from little or no to very, very strict. If you look at the rationale behind that, the ones that are very, very strict are in the commercial world, because it's been proven over time that individuals doing aviation work for hire, for compensation, are willing to take more risks than those doing it for their own personal enjoyment. So the rule book is set up that way. And now, granted, that's not always the case, but that's why the rules are the way they are. That's the logic behind it. Right or wrong, that's the way they are, and we have to enforce them. So the reason, the whole misunderstanding around operating of aircraft for commercial purposes is basically started around the exemption in Section 333 of our legislation, where special privileges were granted in law to modelers and hobbyists. So legally, those special provisions, special permissions, only apply when you're doing hobby or recreational purposes. Now, a lot of people want to stretch that definition and work in the gray area, and good luck to them. But the bottom line is, if you're getting compensated for your flight, just like if I owned an airplane and I was having people pay me to take them somewhere, I could not operate under the private pilot rules. I'd have to operate on the commercial pilot rules. So that's the rule book. That's what the rules say.
Okay, so commercial, I don't want to take up a lot of time, I just want to clarify. So commercial is, as you said, doesn't have an exemption in the FAA law, the FAA 2012 Modernization Act. But you investigate unsafe actions, which doesn't necessarily mean commercial?
Well, on occasion, we've been informed of operations where an individual is doing commercial operations, usually by a manned aircraft operation where they do manned aircraft surveying, and they'll let us know that, hey, I'm losing all my business to these guys. They're not approved. Go investigate. We will investigate those as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Patrick, your clock says I'm 4 minutes over.
I'll keep it brief.
We'll take one more.
All right. This is the second time I've seen you this year, so you're sort of like the Grateful Dead of the unmanned aerial industry. So I'm following your tour. But I'm a recreational.
I'll be in Orlando next week.
Okay, right. We'll get the crew together. I've been a recreational hobby pilot for a long time, as I think a lot of people in the industry are, and then some find ways to progress to commercial use. I do a lot of stuff with the search and rescue team, and it's a natural progression to move on to some of that. Do you expect that the regulations will warrant needing to be a full-scale pilot to do these operations outside of hobby-based use?
Unfortunately, because the rule is actually in the process where it is, I can't talk about what's in it. Currently, well, one thing I can tell you is that our legislation, our authorizing legislation, actually requires in the law that aircraft have to be operated by certificated pilots. Right. That's in the law, and we can't waive it. So we have to be consistent with that.
But that's a pretty significant barrier of entry, wouldn't you? For your standard small business owner.
You're making an assumption that when we do the small rule, it'll be the same as a
I'm hoping it's
license.
changed, because I think most people would agree you don't need quite the same level, at least within certain parameters, to make safe operations. So hopefully
stay tuned to the Federal
great.
Register, and you'll see when we put it out where we landed on that, and then you can comment on, let us know whether we went too far or too short.
I'll see you at your next show. Thank you.
Thank you.